What's up, everybody? We're here with Kyle and Zach, who will be helping me talk about scare acting, how you prepare and for the role, and how you prepare for acting that night. We're just going to be covering a bunch of different topics for episode 2 of the Scare Actor podcast. I am Brad, or Bradley, your host. Zach, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hey, what's up?
Don't be afraid to speak up.
Hey, this is Kyle.
Sick. All right, so basically what we want to talk about, like last time, just to reiterate briefly, episode 1, we talked a bit about like our first nights of scare acting. It was a bit of a jumbled mess, but this time around we're going to get a little bit more prepared. We're going to be talking about like preparation for scare acting. So essentially, like, what do you need for once you've been hired and like once you're getting into it and you've gone through training? What's going to help you kind of get through like your first few nights and get into a routine? It's kind of different for everybody depending on like your style as well as like what you're into. Definitely hydration is key, number one. Like if you're not hydrating, then like your entire time is going to be awful. This is an actual job, and like, scare acting is going to be a lot more taxing cardio wise. You can get away with like not being as intense and you need to pace yourself, but you're going to need water no matter what. Zach here is actually a slider, which brings like a whole different dynamic to this. He's a specialty scarer, essentially, where they wear knee pads and a bunch of stuff, and he'll be able to explain it better than I, honestly.
I used to slide a lot for King's Dominion, like 7 years of doing that. The type of equipment you would need for sliding, you got to have steel toe boots, because you slide across the ground, you're going to rip them open. You're going to rip your toes off if you don't have it on. I have slid without the steel toe. It does hurt, but I think there's worse things, but you should wear them. You got knee pads, and we don't use like regular knee pads. Like they are regular knee pads, but instead of using the little plastic pucks that they usually come with, we got these like industrial size, like they look like hockey pucks. They just put them on your knee. It's honestly like if you don't switch them around a lot, they'll like wear on one side like super hard, so they'll just be like all like lopsided, so you'll start sliding and just lean over and like eat shit on the ground. Yeah, so you got your knee pads and your boots, and then I've used like a bunch of different kinds of gloves before, like as far as like longboarding gloves with those big pucks, or like to just like little mechanic spraying like mechanic gloves that just have like a metal washer like just glued to it, where you can put like flint and stuff on it and make them spark on the ground. It's pretty cool. You can get sparks off your like boots once you wear the like boot down enough and the steel toe is exposed. You can get little sparks off that if you got like a good slide. Normally just put like little bars of flint like on your, like tape it to your puck or something. Not tape it, but like glue it on there, and then it'll just like light the fuck up. It's crazy.
We're just going to dive right into the slider side of it for now, and then we're going to bring Kyle in for the her side of it. She worked in a doll factory. Dolls are honestly one of the freakier aspects of haunt, and I know there's a ton of people that like out there that are terrified of them, and my grandmother personally had like an entire collection, and my fiance and I, we went up there recently, and we had to stay in the guest room, and there was about 30 creepy dolls from like the 60s staring at us, and we had to put a whole thing like a blanket over, because that was just not what we were going to deal with. But yeah, Kyle, talk a little bit about the doll factory.
All right, so you're talking about preparation for haunt. My first year, I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't buy water. I didn't buy baby wipes to take my makeup off or anything. I just went into it blind. And I quickly learned that every year for preparation, I did it for 6 years at King's Dominion, and I worked another couple small-time haunts in different places in Virginia. I was dumping money into this. I was dumping money into it. Like, at least at King's Dominion, we got paid decently, for what we were doing. And I was just, buying a ton of Gatorade, a ton of cough drops, because I was constantly popping those all night to keep my voice. And then the
Fisherman's Friend.
Oh, Fisherman's Friend. Yeah, that's great cough drops. Gatorade sponsor, yeah. Also, I should have been sponsored by red wine at that time, because I would also buy a lot of that to get me through the season. The secret juice. And then we would buy contacts. We would buy a lot of our own gear. I'm sure Zach bought a lot of duct tape and stuff to keep your boots together. No? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's crazy. They didn't provide me anything.
I was gonna say, I'm surprised they actually provide you with anything.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you wanted anything extra for your costume, you would have to go purchase it yourself. And a lot of people did just because it would make the scare better.
As far as like, mentally preparing, there is a lot that goes into that. I think everyone here can attest to that. I'm just gonna say that your mental health is always number one. You're gonna encounter a lot of rude guests. You're gonna encounter a lot of like, there's even coworkers that are gonna be in a bad mood because you're in a box where that is 100 degrees, scaring a bunch of people that you don't know, and the whole nature of the job is very intense. So we're gonna jump around and talk about our experiences with some of the hardest nights that we've had, which you can't even pinpoint what day or night it is because this happens every season, but. I was in Zombie High, and I wasn't even a talent coach at this point. It was like my second or third year, but I had a mask on, and it was like 100 degrees, even though it was like October. It was mid-October, and it was like 110 inside this maze, and we didn't even get AC in there, which is like a whole King's Dominion. Fix your shit. That's all I gotta say. A conga line in the industry, or at least what we called it. Is essentially when they just open the entrance and the exit doors and they allow the guests to pour through, and you have to, you will literally have a line just going through your maze and you have to scare like that. And that is one of the most mentally taxing things, especially on a hot night. And there was one night where it was raining too, but for some reason the entirety of, Virginia decided to show out. And I just remember that I looked at my clock, and it was only after I had been scaring these people, and like these people are dripping wet, and there's cement floors, and I've been slipping everywhere, and like doing my scares, and still enjoying myself overall. But I thought 3 hours had passed, and I looked down, like it's been 30 minutes, and the time dilation when you are in that kind of environment is genuinely insane.
So I was in Doll Factory, and it was a scary maze to some, maybe. I don't think it's scary to just put girls in little baby doll dresses and throw some blood on them, but I'm not the average. I'm not the average person. But so these conga lines were especially terrifying for us as a maze of 75% women. And you would think the guests are, like, afraid of us, but they're not. They're just like, oh, young girls in short dresses. Even though she's covered in blood and looks like her eyes and throat have been ripped out, I'm going to sexually harass her. Yeah. So that was a real big problem in our maze. I mean, sure, it was, like, mentally taxing. I would always tell newcomers that we were more afraid of the guests sometimes than they were afraid of us, especially young girls working there. They would get hit by older men who would come through drunk.
If you're going to be a part of this, don't be quiet about anything. If you ever get hurt during scare acting, always notify somebody. Your bosses should be the ones to be taking care of that, but that is not the case in a lot of scenarios. So just do your best to take care of each other, because the best way to avoid this is A, don't enable shitty people to do shitty things at our parks, and B, be in open communication with your coworkers around you and have ways to get to each other and ways to get in and out of wherever you are, because that is key to this. It sucks that we even have to talk about this as a reality of scare acting, but it doesn't seem to be talked about enough, honestly, that safety is number one, and people have a tendency to kind of dehumanize people when they're in a costume and a mask. There's been psychological studies done by this that guests actually are more inclined to, get physical with the scare actors, and most of the time scare actors are 15-year-old kids, These are grown people, getting aggressive with them, so if you're a customer that going into this and you think it's funny to just mess with people, just keep in mind that that's a human being behind that, and we're all here for the fun, and we're all here for the industry. We're not here to to prove something or to show how tough we are. That's we all love the job, we love the intensity, and there's some competitiveness to it, but we are not here to hurt people and sexually harass them. It's absolutely disgusting.
So some of these guests be wildin', dude. Some people are really cool, sometimes I'll see little group groups of little kids, their parents or whatever, and they're just watching and having a good time, creep up on the kid or whatever, and they'll freak out, but I'll be like, wait, I need your help, dude. I'll just get little kids to help me scare other guests. It's funny. But sometimes, you think you get in the zone, you're just scaring people left and right. So you're I'm just gonna, this dude's 100 feet taller than me. I'm just gonna terrify this guy. It turns out he's really, really not scared, or he was really, really scared. All right, I'll put it this way: I came up behind him, hit him with the creepy little noise, and he was not about it. He turned around and swung a fist at me so hard. I didn't get hit, but I ducked, and his girlfriend or like sister or whatever was like 3 feet tall, and she ate it. She ate the whole thing. And yes, dude. He turned around like, oh shit! Swung his fist, and then I ducked, and bow! She's
Yeah, like when you're out in a zone, it's genuinely different. People are so much more willing to like just like start swinging, and like sometimes if any of our past supervisors, anybody that we worked with hears this, sorry, but like there are so many times that we didn't tell y'all about whether when we hit guests or we yelled at them, we threw them into walls, because like that's just kind of what you got to do. Like, well, two situations. One of them, I was just in an area that had these the drop down curtains, the black rubber like things that kind of help block view in the mazes to kind of help transition people from one room to the next. And I was hiding behind one of the curtains, and somebody noticed me, and it was a long line, and I just, out of nowhere, somebody just grabs my crotch, and I'm like, the craziest thing about it is that I never saw who did it. I just saw that like very briskly grabbed me, and it's humorous, but at the same time, it's definitely not. Don't do that to people. I had this very large man, very large gentleman come through the locker room area. He people like to kind of like sway and shoulder into scare actors sometimes, just to kind of like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, but they like to shoulder people. He shouldered me like straight into the lockers, like my head was ringing a bit, and like I just reacted.
And he's like, get out of the way, dweeb.
Yeah, he was there, dude. It's like, dude, being in that zombie hive felt like sometimes like it was just high school. I took this man and I threw him against the wall, and it was like some superhuman strength came out of me, even though the look on that man's face was very satisfying, but it was also like, just, remember when you're scare acting, try not to touch the guests, because like, or at least, make sure you run away, no face, no case. And don't touch the guests if you can help it, like, only do it in self-defense.
You can absolutely edit this out if you want. I will admit that I don't remember a lot of the bad things guests did to me. I know that they would like, touch me a little bit here and there. I've never been like hit or like full on sexually like assaulted, but people would do stuff. I don't really remember. I was drunk most of the time. But I will say, I do not condone scare actors touching the guests. It's probably not legal for us to do so. But my last year at we had enough. My friend and I. And when these people threatened to hit us, a big group of people, guests, we fought back and we threw a table at them. We threw a whole table at these people because we had absolutely had it with people threatening to hit us. Like, we're just vibing. I'm working there for $10 an hour, just trying to scare some people, have some fun, have some drinks, enjoy my time, a little bit.
Get out of my face.
Yeah.
I'll fucking kill you.
Well, like trying to like posture in front of their girlfriends. Like, sir, I am just a 23-year-old girl. Leave me alone. So we fought back.
No, I love that.
Kill you, dude.
Like, it's like some of the experiences that you will have will not be the best in scare acting, but by no means should we scare anybody away here from the industry, because all industries have bad customers. And honestly, I'm going to go back on my statement prior where I said that do not touch the guests, where I had the opportunity to go to one where they do touch the guests, and I actually have the opinion now that we should be able to touch the guests, which we will go over that in a different episode, but there's a weird difference in safety. All of a sudden, the actors are no longer punching bags, and the actors are people you're actually afraid of, and you will not sexually harass. We'll talk about that in another episode when we talk about Penhurst Asylum and all that, because that was a lot of fun. The first scare tactic that I really like to talk about, but it's also the first on the list, is Dreadnought. And so the movies really capture this really well. Like, like Freddy and Jason, like the actor opens the door, the person opens the door, and like they see that big ominous character just like sitting at the end of the hallway.
Big light in the background. You're like,
Oh yeah, just like a big light in the background, and like, you know, just and their presence fills the room. They make themselves known. They do not have to, you know, they don't have to do anything. They stand there, and you are terrified, and you're gonna do something, whether it be run away, scream, etc. Dreadnought scaring is all about timing, in my opinion, and you actually don't even have to be big to dreadnought scare. Dreadnought scaring is all about like being with people's like reality and timing.
You just got to make sure you have like a super intense presence. You know what I mean? You can walk in a room and look really scary and be like, okay, well, that guy looks pretty scary. But if you walk in the room and like just standing tall, just with that confidence of just like, that's right, I'm here, don't get in my way. It's just, you don't even have to look like talk at anyone. You just walk through like no one's even there, and you just look at one person and they're like, oh, fuck that.
I didn't do no dreadnoughting. So they'll tell you when you start a scare actor job, like different ways you can scare. Nah, throw all that out the window. It's just, you learn by doing this. No one told me, oh, as a little baby doll with blood on me, that I should start screaming at the top of my lungs at people and acting completely unhinged and crazy. But I started to do that, and those ended up being the best scares ever. I did a lot of mannequin scaring too, which is where you just stand completely perfectly still. They'll usually blend you in with actual mannequins and dolls and stuff in the maze. And then you can just, you know, pop out, start moving. That's pretty easy. Easy way to scare. But my favorite way of scaring quickly became just screaming at the absolute top of my lungs at people. And I never lost my voice, not once in 6 years, just by constantly streaming cough drops into my mouth.
I feel like the screamer thing, like, because I did a lot of that too in Zombie, and like, that's just, you won't lose your voice if it's coming from a place of emotion. If it's coming from, because a lot of people, like, with my screaming, because like, I'm a vocalist by trade also, so screaming in general, like, I've been doing for years, and a lot of people would ask me, it's just like, you know, oh, is the nice acting, bro? And it's like, that's not acting. I'm really upset a lot of the time. I channel, it's a good way to channel like a lot of negative emotion and into something more positive. The screamer aspect is powerful ones, because especially in a maze is where screamers are really good, and like especially in Doll Factory, because Doll Factory was a lot more echoey than Zombie High. You could hear screams from the other end of that maze, where in Zombie there was so many ambient noises that like you could hear it. But I was able to scream from one end of that maze, and I just had too much energy when I was younger. Kyle especially, like I remember going through a couple times, like either as a talent coach or as on my night off, and Kyle would like be sitting in her corner, and like if she saw me, she would always amplify it too. But like I just remember this one night, I walk in and she just starts this blood curdling scream that didn't quite, I don't know how to describe it. It didn't even sound like it came from any gender. It just sounded like it came from like the ether of like pain. That's all it was.
Something.
It's genuinely something to behold when like somebody's screech is able to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and like it makes you almost want to start screaming too. I never get like that fear of like where I run away from screams. It just makes my brain torque and makes me just like terrified of like being quiet.
No, I'm very proud of my scream. I'm proud of the fact that people thought I was fake. They thought I was an animatronic.
Jump scares in general, right? So calling like a tactic a jump scare is really dumb to me, because honestly, anybody that's in any industry ever knows that jump scares, you know, kind of a cop-out nowadays in like movies and video games, and even though that they work, the cop-out jump scare is more just like a predictable place, the scary shadow, and then like you jump out at the first guess. That's the most predictable, boring jump scare you could possibly do. Like if you jump out from the fog, specifically, you can use the fog to your advantage. Predictable areas are not good, and I'll have Zach talk a bit more about that.
Well, honestly, that's like half my life being a slider, is just hiding somewhere and waiting. Because it's like cheating. Everyone's afraid of you with the knee pads and saying, because like the knee pads are like, for the most part, like where at least at Kings Dominion, like the ground is like really like super dark black pavement, and the knee pads are like all black. So like they don't even see them on you most of the time. So you're just like a dude sliding on the ground, and it looks like you're floating, and all they hear is this noise, and they're like, oh! Other than like hiding behind stuff, because that's like super easy, because no one sees you, and then you're just like like I said, like the knee pads aren't necessarily the first thing that stick out to people. So you hit them with that dreadnought thing where you just stand there and you look all scary, and then you can intimidate them. You know, you just like walk towards a group of people and like make eye contact with, like, you know, look through who looks the most uncomfortable, and you just look them in the face. So much easier when you have like a mask or some makeup on, because you're just like, I'm not even a real person. They don't think I'm a real person either, but now I'm looking at you, and they're just paying so much attention to your face, and then you just jump on the ground and slide like in front of them in like 1 second. You were just like 20 feet away, and now you're in their face.
The sliders have some of the best opportunities for scaring, in my opinion, just because like a lot of people don't expect that. A lot of these guests have no clue that sliders even exist. There's just a huge intimidation factor going on there. An intimidation factor that honestly able to close that kind of distance is just psychologically like just jarring for so many people. Sliders have a lot of opportunity with like levels that when it comes to depth perception, that the only other people that kind of get to do that is like runners, like people that are really good at sprinting and like getting like up in people's faces and repositioning. I would actually like, for Zach, could you actually talk a little bit about the training and like what they had y'all do to prepare for this?
Training is like my favorite part, because you're just playing all day with the knee pads. So there's like there's a couple different types of slides you can do. You know, they call it 4s and 2s. Like 4 is like 4 points of contact, like both your hands and your knees. And then, you know, 2 is just your knees. The point of like the sliding thing is to cover a lot of ground really fast and just like get in people's face real quick. We would like set up trash cans, and we would like slide at it and try to just like stand up and stop as fast as you can, like as close to it as you possibly can. Or like we'll like have somebody stand behind it and like push it forward, so like just in case, you know, if you were gonna slide at one group and then some kid just like jumped out at you and was just like haha, wants to like mess you up, you gotta be ready to like stand up really quick. So we practice doing all that stuff. It's hard, but it's not like as hard as it would like seem. The hardest part really is just like committing to like throwing your foot like out from under you and like slamming the ground to stand up. You gotta like want to stand up, you know what I mean? A lot of like people I've seen, like they're like afraid of the pads, so they don't want to like stand up really quick because they're afraid they're gonna fall. It's just like leaning back. That's all you gotta do.
Did you guys have any consequences for hitting people?
Oh, well, I mean, like at an amusement park, yeah, you hit somebody, you're fired. That's that's it.
Standard, yeah.
They're like, oh, you hit somebody, no lawsuit. He's gone.
Yeah.
You're out of here. Like, I won't lie though. I mean, like I have like bumped into people, but it's pretty clear to tell like if it was an accident or like if you didn't really hurt anybody. Like, yes, they're usually pretty like lax about it, but you don't want to hit anyone.
I've definitely seen that. It was a certain worker that not a lot of us liked a whole lot, and he should have been fired for this, but he was a slider and he bodied some kid. Like I was standing on top of like my tombstone, because this was my last year working there, and I had been moved off of my talent coach position to just be a normal scare and more of a scare zone. I looked over and like there he is just sliding away doing his thing, and like all just boom hit, just smacked this kid out. The kid admittedly did kind of like, you know, come out like the cut, but you got to be prepared for that. You know, you can't just be like doing whatever you want when sliding. And it was really crowded that night too. And this kid like got bodied, and then the family was like, oh, you know, kind of like halfway freaked out, but he was able to talk it off really well, which, like, you know, probably gonna have to talk your way out of a situation with guests at some point because like if you bump into the wrong people and they try to fight you, you got to get away.
If we're talking about smacking into people, I accidentally did that a lot because I have absolutely no fear. I would just round the corner without looking to see if there was a guest or not. And I definitely smacked foreheads with a lot of people. And they usually wouldn't care. They would think it was funny, or like they'd be like, oh, you got me that time. But I really didn't have a problem getting extremely close to people. I would just go up to people and swipe my hand in front of their face, like an inch from their eyes. I brought chalk in 1 year because, again, baby doll, kid thing. I brought chalk in, and I was drawing satanic things on the ground in front of guests, and as they would walk past me, I would run the chalk in between their legs.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And, I mean, I never got kicked or anything, and I don't know, I never accidentally actually hit someone in the face, but I came inches close to doing so.
I've definitely had my finger stepped on and stuff before. Not fun at all. The one that I like a lot is being a weirdo. You know how I said earlier that like when people are like, oh, like that's a really good act that you're doing. It's like, oh, no. Being frantic, being very like, you know, twitchy, being very just overall like just crazy. And like I love it because it freaks people out, because a lot of people don't have those urges actually, so especially if they've never been exposed to that kind of weird stuff. In fact, the new Ted Bundy did that. He was known as like a spaz because he didn't know how to get attention. The only way he knew how to get attention was like negative attention, and he would like just start spazzing out and like doing weird stuff. And we all kind of like knew people like that, but this scare tactic allows you to take it to that next level of just like absolute insanity.
Maybe normal people don't have these urges to just like go into Target and throw stuff on the floor, but I have that all the time, and I'm never gonna act on it because I'm not, you know, a piece of shit. But if you've never walked past a display in Walmart and want to just like swipe all this stuff off the shelf, then like, wow, you're pretty normal. I would just like spout nonsense at people. I would take objects and beat them against the floor, against the walls, jump off of things. Again, stuff I wasn't supposed to do. Slam doors as hard as I could.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of leeway with the weirdo thing. It's all based on your individual personality and whatever weird things that you do in the mirror when doors are closed and nobody's looking.
I would go into a lot of weird stuff, like an ex of mine, and just other weird stuff at home. So I was just already like in a really weird like state of mind, and I have like weird brain issues, and sometimes I just lose it and I just like scream and freak out like in my own accord. But I was just like, I just had too much like over the weekend, and I was out there and somebody said something weird that just made me think about like everything I had just gone through. Like I just started yelling like, nobody's real, I don't know where I am, what's happening. Just like everything that my brain was doing, I was just doing out loud like immediately, and I just like did all of that, like blacked out, and I just like like woke up and just like came to, and there's just like a lot of people like all stopped moving, like staring at me, and I was just like, what do you guys want? And just, I was like, I had no idea what was happening. Like, I just like woke back up like, oh God. Oh, no. Everyone here is really scared of me, I think. I just like, after that, I have a slider, so I just like slid away and pretended like it was all on purpose.
What's so weird about this job is that like when you're tweaking like that, it's like sometimes if you're actually having a problem, it can take people a minute to realize, because like some people are just like, oh wow, you're doing really crazy things, good job, and then it's like, no, I'm having problems. Like there was actually a time where one of my zombies got knocked out and was laying on the floor of like the maze for like 2 whole minutes before somebody found them, because guests were just walking by thinking that they were like setting up a scare or something. Like
zombies, so they're like dead.
Yeah, they're like dead, and this person was just out cold on the floor, and which ever since then I felt so bad, because like, you know, that kind of stuff really is jarring, you know, and nobody likes getting knocked out.
A pretty cool scare tactic that's kind of hard to do. You have to be right place, right time. If your friend is coming through as a guest, you can tag team with them ahead of time and be like, oh, I'm coming through at 9:30. Like, do you want to do something cool? And she's like, sure. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to make you a part of the act. I'm going to like grab you by the hair and hit you in front of all the other guests and drag you behind the scenes kicking and screaming. Because I did that once or twice.
I think like the tag teams with like people that you know that came through as customers was great, just because the immersion was just so good. Tag teaming in general is great. We talked about that a little bit in the first episode, but tag teaming with your friends that are guests, that is it terrifies the entire group around them, because you just grab somebody that looks just like them, and those are actually some of the moments where I've made people actually piss themselves. And like, it's really good if you prepare it right, but you have to make sure that the rest of the group knows, because if you don't get that timing right, it's just gonna flop on its face. I would say that tag teaming with other people and your coworkers, not just like, you know, friends that might come through as guests, is one of the best ways to get scares, because you know, when you think about it, everyone's eyesight is kind of like a movie, right? It's kind of like everyone has like a vision and a field of view, and you're ducking in and out of that field of view, because let's be real, if you break the science of scare tactics and scare acting down, it's all about field of view. It's all about like how you can like subvert the six senses to get somebody to be terrified and afraid. Then, because that's true fear, is that you have cut through their defense mechanisms and have cut to the heart of like, oh shit, I'm about to die. That's kind of what fear comes from. And, or at least maybe not I'm about to die, but oh, you're hitting that panic button. And when you are able to like bounce a guest from yourself to your friend, because I one of my best scares that I ever did was in Zombie High. I popped up from down low and up and hit the guest like in the face. When I say things like hit, I mean scare, not actually hit them. And then he fell backwards a bit and was I had cut through that defense mechanism because I just completely blindsided him. He stood up, and then that level of him standing up from the ground allowed the person behind him, Tyler, to come around his corner and break through his defenses a second time. And that's like the poop layer. That's like where he shit himself. Like he actually shit himself. And that was my first time ever having that kind of moment. Definitely a terrible like moment for that customer. They probably would remember that for the rest of their lives. One of the greatest scares, because you actually make somebody like release their bowels. Like that is true fear. Like,
some of my best scares was where I got people to unintentionally hurt themselves, like physically fall to the ground, run into a wall, stuff like that. Like women would turn around and hit their boyfriend so that they wouldn't hit me.
The bouncing off of people in different energies, and like, Zach could talk about this all day, because scare zones, like that's 110% what you got to do, is a lot of like bouncing off of each other for context.
My first year I was in a maze, so like I got a little taste of both. But dude, it's like harder in a way to scare in a maze, I think, just because you only have like that little bit of spot to like work with. But it's the same time you like, all right, that group came through, and now I can just reset and like do the same thing again and it would work. Or I could just like, I could have like 10 different ideas and I can just cycle them. Where you just like focus all your energy on like one group. If you like catch in the corner of your eye, there's like another group that's like watching you scare them. You can just throw them a look real quick, and then now you got two groups scared at the same time. Change your energy back over to them. The other group thinks they got off the hook because you just like stay with that second group for a little bit, and then you just come back like, what, you think I forgot?
What I'm gonna call it is rubber banding. Is when you're just like bouncing that energy between a couple groups. It can be individuals or it can be entire groups, and like you can like almost domino effect it and like snowball it, where if you get one group real good and like you keep that momentum up, combo, just like, what I would love to do with conga lines, because when we did the conga lines seem like they suck, but when there's more bodies in the maze, when you got more bodies and the park is packed out, you can weave and use people as cover. So I would I was able to scare people over the course of 2 or 3 feet, because I would dive in and out of people's legs and like pop up, down, across, down. I would alternate my levels because everyone's looking in different directions, and if you're fast enough it doesn't matter. And I was able to tag team off of guests and make them essentially screw each other up and get disoriented because they were screaming and they didn't know where anything was coming from. So if you're able to dive in and out of the guests, you can essentially make the guests tag team off of each other. And watching guests get scared of each other is a phenomena that happens a lot, where they're not intentionally trying to, but like they'll get a little bit ahead of their group and like they turn around and like they're somebody runs up or something and like they get floored but it's just their boyfriend or girlfriend. It's not even a scare actor. Like people just get into that zone,
I loved getting people to run the opposite way, screaming, like, oh yeah, oncoming traffic. So I would get people running, screaming in the opposite direction, running physically into other people.
We said, don't hold up the line.
Yeah.
But no, that's the great.
Don't hold up the line.
You hold up the line.
Yeah, but I mean, it was funny. Like, you're doing my job for me. Like, you're running into people and scaring them, and you're just some dude.
Yeah. They always told us not to do that, but I didn't care, and like I would stop the line a lot. Oh yeah, chasing people back into the room they came from, that is a specialty that Kyle has, and like it infuriates supervisors because like they just need guests to come in and out. Okay, so a creeper, right? You pick one person, and they told us that we're not allowed to stalk people necessarily. Like you can't follow somebody throughout the park. People still would if you're in a some people in mazes would sometimes wander out on their way to break and like stalk people on their way to break. But stalking and creeping is a really good way to really break through the defenses of that person in the group who like is acting really tough, because they're usually really vocal and like you can see like who's going to be big and try and be big and tough, but if you have that distance, that moment where like you are just waiting for them to look in your direction to lock eyes, and then that's when they know that it is personal and that their loudness doesn't matter anymore. You know, reaching out with that energy and, you know, the psychological like torment is really a great way to get to people. And like creeping like is also very dimensional because it allows you to like use all distances. It's not limited to like just one kind of thing. It's also very character based. Like being creepy is a very subjective thing, and you can tailor it to like your character but also your guests. And like being able to, you know, intertwine those wires is great, because like you're not going to creep on some like little girl because like that's not really like appropriate, obviously. Like, you know, you're going to do more of a dreadnought, you're going to do something more appropriate, but the creeping really works for more like, you know, the big men, the people that are obviously could beat your ass if like it came to it.
You just watch some dude for like the whole time they're in their zone. You just pick a spot, chill. You just look at them. once they know, you're just looking at them. You walk away. But keep watching them. They'll move a little bit and then just sit somewhere else and just, hey, I'm looking at you. But like the third or fourth time if they've caught you staring at them in another place, by this time they're concerned at least. They're just a little bit worried. So what I would like to do is I would tell someone else about my target that I've been singling out with my eyes for like 10, 15 minutes. And then I'll tell them like, just sneak up on them in like 2 minutes. just a little bit of time. Just then go sneak up on them. You'll see. Just watch them from somewhere else. Find out when they're looking at me. It was so good. That last stare, he locks eyes with me, and I'm just looking at him, and I just hit him with the like, hey, look around, turn around. And there's one of my homies just like behind their shoulder, and they're fuck, like that's it. The biggest dude on campus has now just been turned into a little baby.
No, dude, I love the long game. The long game scares are the best because they take the dedication and the patience for you.
Payoff, dude. So
the payoff is great, and that's why the creeper is a really good one for the payoff. So the chameleon, like that, this is one that like we just thought up because we wanted to come up with some of our own terms too. And the chameleon, that's somebody who is capable of blending in with the guests. This can take like a multitude of like different forms. It can be like what I did once is I played victim in Zombie High because my makeup was not that good. I just looked like a human that had bad acne. I just decided to run around and allow like, you know, my zombies to attack me. Being able to blend in like that and just be like, you know, a victim or act like, you know, you're part of the crowd, and then all of a sudden one of the zombies or some other actor nabs you out of the crowd and you two start doing a whole thing and scaring people. Another way to do it is to almost transform as a chameleon. So if you are in that role of like, you know, maybe the group hasn't noticed you. So this works really well in scare zones where there's a group of 16 people and you just slide right up into the middle of them. Sometimes you could even start like getting into their conversation and they're mindless enough about it to where they don't know that like they're talking to a scare actor and like, oh yeah, no. And then when they finally realize like that they're not talking to their friend anymore, like the entire group, it's like a landmine just goes off in the middle of the group and they just all just like run. Like, but when you transform in the group, it allows for bouncing off your coworkers really well. You can use that landmine to bounce. Like, you'll have like 8 people go different directions, and then all of the other people in your scare zones can pick them off just one by one. Just, you know, slide in and just like some of the most dynamic scares I've seen in scare zones where they would break up an entire group, like to the point where like these people had a tough time finding each other afterwards. Like the chameleon would do his job and like break the group up, and then the sliders would come in and just, you know, schwack all the people that were like, you know, trying to like stumble away, and then the other scare actors would just be weaving in and out of the group, and that chaos alone is like a catalyst to just like the rest of like your area. The other groups around you are going to start losing it, and like when there's 200 people in your area and like, you know, that the chaos starts ensuing, like it's going to take a solid 10 minutes for people to like figure their stuff out, find like their friends and like go. And that's like, you know, an experience in of itself for the guest. Like,
yeah, a funny one with like the blending, like using big ass groups of people. You can like, as like the monster, you know, like you can be rude. So you just like walk in the middle of them, and everyone's like, "Hey, who the fuck is this guy?" And then you turn around, you just shh, and they're like, "Oh no, it's a monster. It's a monster. I'm gonna do what he says." And then I'm standing in the middle of a group, right? And there's just like 3-4 people in front of me, and then like 2 people in front of them. You lean in, like scare in between the 2 people in front of you, like have them move out of the way, and then just like, "Hey."
So I was throwing up in the maze one time, and people walked in on me doing it. Like, guests rounded the corner to me puking in the corner, and they were terrified. It wasn't an act. I was actually throwing up in the corner. Some guests accidentally came into our break room area one time and found us taking a smoke break and just were terrified.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for, like, you know, the scaring outside of, like, when you're even expecting to. Because there's going to be a lot of times, like, if you're going into scare acting, like, we do our best, but, like, sometimes groups are just straggling and, like, they'll catch you, like, smoking a cigarette, and then you just gotta be like, yeah. Just, like, put up, like, a finger on your lips, just like, hush, shh,
Don't you say a goddamn thing. Yeah. I'll come back for you.
But yeah, the chameleon is one of my favorites because it can be applied to most everything and is one of the most dynamic out of everything. I feel like I'm saying the word dynamic a lot, and if I am, like, holy shit, tell me to stop. It's dynamic. Everything is dynamic levels. So pacing and cadence and frequency, right? So pacing, everything in scaring is about pacing. There's been times where I thought I had the perfect setup, but literally me putting my left foot forward instead of my right foot forward was the kicker for not getting the scare. Like, there's very strange, like, things about the context of every situation, like, in life, and I feel like, especially in scare acting, it's like you gotta, like, follow a certain vibration, a certain frequency that connects with the person or group that you're trying to scare. You're trying to kind of subvert those 6 senses, that defense mechanism I was talking about before. And in order to do that, it requires offbeat pacing. In music, they tell us a lot about 4/4, which honestly you can use on-beat pacing with your scaring to achieve really good scares. But honestly, like, when you start breaking conventional timing where somebody would expect you to pop out somewhere, someone expects you to do something, and then you just completely and totally, like, you know, roll the dice and do something different. Like, one that I would do a lot is if I found myself doing, like, the same thing too often, or if my pacing was just off, I would, like, I would run stop. I would, like, start getting more jarring and, like, short paced with it, or I would change up, like, the length of time, or I would deliberately offset myself from, like, a traditional pacing. If you start, like, shaking and, like, jarring yourself in a way, you know, off beat, that immediately puts people off. And I found out through some psychology classes that if you get on beat with somebody's heart tempo, that you can actually trigger anxiety, and there's other weird things that you can do with that. So if you get good enough at this with being in tune with people and, you know, all this, you can kind of, like, start doing some creepy weirdo scares and incorporate your own style, obviously, but you can start doing some really strange stuff.
My pacing was like stupid. I would start off at like 100 miles an hour, just like run, slide, stand up, and then I'll just like stop and just like walk, like really, really slow, like drag my feet for like a good like 10 minutes. And just what happened? This dude was like an insane psychopath like 20 minutes ago. Now he's not moving, or he is moving. Is he dead?
I was somehow able to keep my, like, level at 100 for all 6 hours every night. Oh, I was able to do that. One thing, in almost every haunt I've worked at, they'll tell you to not scare the front of the line. They'll tell you to scare the middle or the end. They'll say that's where people who are the most afraid are going to walk. And I did that, like, my first couple years. I was like, oh, I'm just only going to scare the middle of the line. Like, you know, that makes sense. But it gets boring. It gets predictable. So I stopped doing that. I just started staring at the ground and just counting in my head. And I don't know, I would count to 4 or I'd count to 10. And every time I would just change it up and pop up at that point and scare someone different. Like, it's becomes very predictable when every haunt tells you to not scare the front of the line. So then guests start to realize that. So they're like, oh, I'm really afraid. I'm going to walk in front so no one's going to mess with me.
A lot of like norms that are starting to get established with guests, like now that this industry is growing and like more and more people are starting to realize that like the haunt side of like entertainment is, which it's already been a thing for decades, you know, if not centuries, but I feel like it's really coming into its own as being like a, you know, more than just a seasonal thing. It's becoming more of a year-round industry, and we see that because we see guests coming through like constantly every single year, not just seasonally, but like they are constantly posting about haunt, or they are haunts in general. You know, people that are really into cosplay are usually into this sort of thing. It's one of those things where it's crazy to see how this industry blows up like over the years, and I honestly think the next 10 to 20 years we're going to see like a huge boom in like scare acting stuff, as long as Corona doesn't end the world before then. Oh yeah, I would go year round too if I had the if that was an option, which in some places it is, but it kind of takes away from the effect in certain places. I feel like it should be a year round thing, just because like I'd love to do it full time as a job. I know Disney does it for not year round, but they do it for like a third of the year or something, like where it's more like fall to the end of winter is when they do it, as opposed to just like 2 months like King's Dominion did.
I don't just like scaring, I like being scared. So I would go to a year-round haunted house as a guest just for fun.
I wanted to go to more stuff like while working, but the thing is the conundrum of being a scare actor is that you don't get to see a lot of scare stuff during the season if you are busy every single weekend, or just depending on what your schedule is. Like, you know, now that we're no longer working at a corporate place, we have a lot more wiggle room to go and visit other places, but can't say the same for people still working at haunt. Like, takes up a lot of time.
I am retired from haunts.
Yeah, I feel like I could never retire, but I feel like there will become a point where I won't be scaring in haunted houses anymore. Just depends on when like my body breaks, I guess. Frequency, I wanted to like specifically talk about this, like that you can apply that to everything, and I guess it sort of applies to the concept of levels in scare acting, but frequency I think is a better way to put it, because frequencies, you know, everything involved with the rate at which you do something, how much intensity you do it, when you do it, the who, what, when, where, why, all adds up to a frequency that has amplitude. And like, you know, science-y crap aside, is that if you were able to work with those frequencies or between people, as well as, I guess, essentially just reading a room. If you're in a maze, you know, you're going to be stuck in that room, and reading that room 1,000 times over seems like a daunting and annoying task. That's kind of where the whole professional aspect of it comes in. Can you rework a room 1,000 times? Read different frequencies based on who comes in, based on what you do? Are you capable of changing up your frequency, or are you somebody that you're too tired and, like, you know, it happens to everybody some nights, but there's some nights where you drag out and you're doing the same thing for a whole hour. So it's really important to practice mindfulness, so that way you're good at, like, you know, adopting different frequencies and being able to, you know, put in that aspect into anything you're doing in scare acting, and to be able to ride all the different waves instead of just learning how to ride the one wave. Yeah, people ask a lot about, like, you know, how much do scare actors get paid?
It's like everybody's first question is, y'all get paid for this?
Everybody thinks it's such a neat job at first, the idea of scare acting, and they're like, oh yeah, that's great. Like, but, you know, it depends on where you're at, and quite honestly, there's some places, the mom and pop places, those scare actors are not getting paid a dime. They are doing it because they love it, and you should appreciate them for that. And you should understand that, you know, in mom and pop places, it's a little bit harder to stay consistent, because these are usually high schoolers. These are not people, you know, they are on their way to being professionals. Some of them would probably argue with me and pride themselves on being professionals at a young age. So, you know, keep in mind that, like, a lot of people are doing it because they like it and love it, not just because it's a profitable thing, because I made enough money, but so as like a monster, you can, at King's Dominion, I know it used to be you got paid like $9 or $10 an hour, and then each year you returned, you got like an extra $1, and it capped at like 15. And then when they changed management, they silently took that away. They changed it over to everyone is like $10.25 an hour, and then like talent coaches only got like 11 something. And then I found out that our talent coordinators, that are like the people above us that are more in the entertainment side of things, they were only getting paid like $13 an hour to do what they were, and their jobs were big. Like, that should have been salary. Like, and I had a lot of problems with some of them, and like, now I have a lot more empathy for like their position, because like I've realized like, oh, you were making 13 an hour and like had way more responsibility than me. Wow, no wonder that you were this angry all the time, you know?
I've worked at some small time haunts where you only get $25 a night. So, not really worth it, to be quite honest. Yeah, it is a lot of work. I do love scaring, and I sometimes miss it. I would maybe go volunteer maybe one night a year at most now, but I am effectively retired. I can't do this anymore. At King's Dominion, you could make pretty good money, though. I mean, even if it was only like $10 or $11 an hour, think about it. You would get there at 2 p.m. to start getting ready. The maze wouldn't open till 6, but there was a lot of things to do. The line... a lot of downtime, but I mean, you'd have to get your costume, stand in line to get your costume, stand in line for makeup, get your makeup. They would make you do warm-ups and stuff. It wasn't just like you show up, throw some stuff on and walk out there. It was hours and hours of preparation. So I mean, you work from 2 p.m. till 2 a.m. Once you you can make pretty good money.
Yeah, that was something that I forgot to talk about in the first episode, was the warm-ups, because that's a huge part of it. Like, holy shit, stretch. I don't know why I didn't talk about that. Like, always do that before doing anything.
He was like water.
Like, water and stretch, always. Like, I think you get paid a lot more once you breach into more professional things. Like, you know, if you're a zombie working on The Walking Dead, you're not getting paid that much more, but it's at least a 15 an hour job as opposed to like a 10 or 12. Yeah, so but you know, each industry is different, and how it all works is different, and money is always a convoluted topic in anything. I would just say, just be prepared to don't put your expectations too high so you don't get disappointed.
Yeah, if you want to do it, you better just think it's fun. Money is cool, but like making someone piss themselves is way cooler. So.
Meanwhile, Zach over here got paid more than me when I was a talent coach because he was a slider and he got hazard pay. So I'm pretty sure you made like how much? Like,
dude, I think at some point I was making like 12 something.
Yeah.
I didn't really look at it, but my paychecks looked pretty sweet sometimes, and I was just like, damn, I came here like at like 1 o'clock and I like took a nap in the other room. Oh, to be fair though, I was always working a lot, so I was like, I would tell the supervisor like, hey, I clocked in, my makeup time is in like an hour, but yeah, I've been awake since like I left here yesterday, so I'm gonna go sleep in my like equipment room. Come get me soon, so I don't sleep through the whole thing.
You know, I bet some of y'all listening to this probably think that we're some of the worst employees ever, because we're being very honest here. We didn't sign any NDAs. We are not legally held by anything, so we're not going to filter ourselves too much as far as what we did, because at the end of the day, if you're a scare actor, you know how this industry goes. I would just definitely remember that if you do anything behind the scenes, like, do your best to not like get your coworkers in trouble. Look out for each other. That's always the biggest thing in scare acting. More like communication, teamwork, etc. You know, scare actors should stick out for each other. They should not be narking on each other, because the second that you have that kind of dynamic happening within your scare zone, scare maze, whatever you're doing in Haunt, the second that you do that, you're undermining the whole thing and nobody's going to have fun. Because we all know that this industry is like, you know, very different, very alternative. So, you know, we're not selling candles to grandmothers. We're literally hired to scare you, and we're not here to be nice to you.
My favorite part is like, how many people like yeah, we're professionals, you know what I mean? Like we're getting paid to do it, like depending on where you go, of course. But like at King's Dominion specifically, so many divas, bro. Yeah. I'm like, check it out, dude. You're a vampire, okay? Relax.
Yeah.
Well, like some people thought that they were like the best, like. They would put on their persona the moment they walked in the door, and you know I kind of respect that to an extent. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, this dude is selling it, like whatever. Like he's with it. That's sweet, but yo, when it's over, turn it off.
Yeah. Take a break a little bit, you know.
You want to go behind the scenes a little bit, like smoke your cigarette. I don't need to know that you are Armand V still. Like,
but on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this episode. So we'll see you guys again next episode on the Scare Actor Podcast. I'm Bradley here.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Zach.
You'll probably be hearing from Kyle and Zach again in further episodes. You guys have a nice night. Stay spooky, stay scary, etc.